You wrote an article in December of 1998, and this is what you said. I quote, your words, not mine. The problem with the Christian coalition is not that they are Bible thumpers, but that they are bigots. Did you write that?
I did write that when I was 18 years old, or 20 years old, excuse me. I do want to be clear. I do not agree with that today.
You were a grown woman when you wrote this.
This radical judge nominee thought nobody would ever find what she wrote about Christians, till Senator Kennedy pulled the receipt. Kennedy starts reading from a 1998 article the nominee wrote. She looks calm at first, because she has no idea what's coming. Then Kennedy drops the line. In her own words, she called Christians bigots. Now she immediately tries to backpedal. That was decades ago. I was young, but Kennedy cuts through the excuses and asks the only question that matters. Did you write those words or not? She admits it. And suddenly the entire hearing changes. Because now the question isn't about an old article. It's about whether someone who smeared millions of Americans for their faith deserves a lifetime seat on the federal bench. Let's get into it.
Judge Gray, I may vote for you anyway, but I'll commit right now in front of God and country to vote for you if you'll move back to Louisiana. Judge Lynn, I've read a number of your writings. I want to, you wrote an article in December of 1998 entitled Person of Faith, Race and Religion as Experiential Knowledge. You wrote it in a journal called Perspective. And this is what you said, I quote, your words, not mine. The problem with the Christian coalition is not that they are Bible thumpers, parentheses, there are personal beliefs that often result from religious experiences, close parentheses, but that they are bigots, end of quote. Did I quote that correctly?
I believe you did.
Did you write that?
I did write that when I was 18 years old, or 20 years old, excuse me. I do want to be clear. I do not agree with that today. I wrote that before I went to law school, before I had any kind of
You were a grown woman when you wrote this.
I'm sorry?
You were a grown woman when you wrote this.
I was 20 years old when I wrote it. It was before I had a professional career.
You were in your third year at Harvard?
I was
a senior at Harvard.
I was a junior at Harvard.
Junior. So you were 3/4 of the way through your Harvard education, and you wrote that.
That is correct, Senator. It is
Wow.
20 years before I became a judge. I do not agree with it today. I do want to be clear about that.
Okay. I yield back 1 second, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator Kennedy.
Did you just see that? Now let's break this down. Senator Kennedy didn't walk into that hearing to play nice. He walked in loaded with receipts, and this radical nominee got exposed. Kennedy came in prepared. Not with talking points, not with political theater, with the record. He had read the writings, studied the history, and when the moment came, he dropped it right in the middle of that hearing. Because this wasn't some harmless college opinion. This was Judge Lynn, someone begging for a lifetime seat on the federal bench, who once published an article calling Christians bigots. Think about that for a second. A person who smeared millions of Americans for their faith now wants the power to rule on their rights from the bench. And Kennedy wasn't about to let that slide like Washington usually does. He picked up her own words and read them back to her, line by line. No twisting, no exaggeration. Just the truths she tried to pretend didn't exist anymore. Then came the predictable excuse. I was young. But Kennedy shut that down immediately. You weren't some teenager venting in a diary. You were a Harvard student publishing in an academic journal at one of the most elite universities in the world. Those weren't careless words. Those were deliberate words. And here's what made the moment devastating. Kennedy didn't scream. He didn't rant. He didn't need to. He just forced her to sit there and own what she wrote about millions of Americans. That's real accountability. While most politicians chase headlines and play nice for the cameras, Kennedy came in ready to do the job, ask the hard questions and expose the truth. And when he did, this nominee suddenly had nowhere left to hide. If you believe more senators need to start holding nominees accountable like this, hit like, subscribe, and drop a comment below.